Plant these 9 vegetables. Once and never spend $1 on produce again. Do you know what the grocery store charged for a bag of cherry tomatoes last week? $4.99 for about a pound of tomatoes. Tomatoes that were picked green somewhere 1,000 miles away, gassed with ethylene to turn red on a truck, and placed in a plastic bag with a sticker that says, Farm Fresh. Farm Fresh. I've been gardening for over 30 years, and I want to tell you something that the seed catalogs and the gardening centers don't have much reason to advertise. There are 9 vegetables, 9 plants, that once you put them in the ground, they will come back for you, year after year, some of them for decades, a few of them potentially for the rest of your life. Not because of any special trick, not because of expensive fertilizer or complicated techniques, because that's what these plants were born to do. They're called perennials, and the produce industry has done a very quiet job of making sure most home gardeners never think too hard about them. Because a plant that feeds your family forever is a plant you never have to buy again. Today, that changes. I'm going to walk you through 9 vegetables that, once established in your garden, will produce abundantly, season after season, with almost zero replanting cost. Some of them you can grow in containers on a patio. Some of them will spread so generously you'll be sharing with neighbors. And a few of them carry medicinal and nutritional properties so significant that researchers at major universities have spent years studying them. Stay with me through all 9, because the one I saved for last, it's the one that surprised me most. And I've been doing this for 3 decades. Before we get into the plants, I want to give you a little context, because understanding why these plants work the way they do will help you grow them far more successfully. Most of the vegetables we're used to buying, peppers, tomatoes, corn, zucchini, are annuals. They live one season, produce their fruit, drop their seeds, and die. That's how the commercial growing system is set up. You buy seeds or seedlings every year. The garden center sells them every year. The cycle continues. Perennial vegetables operate on a completely different biological logic. They invest energy downward, into deep root systems, into bulbs, into rhizomes, so that when winter comes, they don't die. They rest. And when spring returns, they don't need you to replant them. They already know what to do. Many of the plants I'm going to show you today have been grown by human beings for 2,000, 3,000, even 5,000 years, long before there were grocery stores, long before there were garden centers, long before anyone was trying to sell you anything. They fed civilizations. They were passed between neighbors, divided from parent plants, shared across generations. The fact that most of us spend $50, $60, $100 a season on annual seedlings and never consider these plants is not an accident of nature. It's an accident of marketing. Let's fix that right now. Let's start with the plant that is simultaneously the most obvious choice and the one most people still haven't grown. Asparagus. I know. You've heard of it. Maybe you've even tried to grow it and given up. A lot of people do, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. And why, if you're patient, asparagus will become the single most valuable investment in your entire garden. Asparagus officinalis has been cultivated for human food for over 2,500 years. It appears in ancient Egyptian tomb paintings. The Romans grew it with such enthusiasm that the Emperor Augustus coined the phrase velocius quam asparagi coquuntur, faster than cooking asparagus, as a way of describing something done instantly. That's how culturally central this plant was. Modern nutritional research has confirmed what ancient cultures understood intuitively. Asparagus is extraordinarily nutrient-dense. A single cup provides over 70% of your daily recommended folate, significant amounts of vitamin K, vitamin C, and iron, and a compound called inulin, a prebiotic fiber that feeds beneficial bacteria in your gut. A 2018 study in the journal Food Chemistry identified over 50 bioactive compounds in asparagus, many of them with documented anti-inflammatory properties. Here's the honest truth about asparagus. It takes patience. You plant crowns, those are the root systems, which you can buy from any reputable nursery, in spring, in a trench about 8 inches deep, with the roots spread like a spider. You cover them with 2 inches of soil first, then add more as the season progresses. In year 1, you let every spear grow into a ferny frond without harvesting a single one. In year 2, same thing, or at most, a light harvest. Year 3, that's when the magic happens. A mature, well-established asparagus bed will produce reliable harvests for 20 to 30 years. Some beds have been documented producing for over 50 years. You will plant this once, and it will outlast most home appliances you own. Choose a permanent, sunny location, at least 6 hours of direct sun, because you're not moving this bed. Prepare the soil generously with aged compost before planting. The crowns do best in USDA zones 3 through 8. Popular varieties include Jersey Knight and Mary Washington for reliability, Purple Passion if you want something visually stunning. The ferny foliage that asparagus grows after you stop harvesting is genuinely beautiful. It makes an excellent ornamental backdrop in garden beds. Some gardeners deliberately plant it along borders for the feathery texture. It's food and landscaping in one plant. Asparagus takes time to establish. The next plant I'm going to show you produces in its very first year, and once it's in the ground, you'll be pulling food from it 3 full seasons out of 4. You've been buying kale wrong. Or rather, you've been buying the wrong kale. The kale at your grocery store. The curly kind, the lacinato, the kind in every smoothie recipe. That's an annual. It grows one season, and it's done. You buy it again next year. But there's another category of kale that almost no mainstream gardening source talks about. It's called perennial kale, and it's one of the most productive, lowest maintenance leafy greens you can grow. Varieties like Daubenton kale, developed and grown widely in France and the UK for over 3 centuries, and tree collards, which have been cultivated on the West African coast for generations, are true perennials. They overwinter in USDA zones 7 through 10, and in colder zones they behave as tender perennials that can be kept alive in a protected spot or propagated from cuttings each year. Perennial kale is nutritionally comparable to its annual cousins, high in vitamins A, C, and K, with meaningful amounts of calcium and potassium, but its leaves are often denser and more flavorful because the plant has had more time to develop its root system. Several European seed preservation organizations, including the Heritage Seed Library in the UK, maintain these varieties specifically because they represent an irreplaceable food security resource. The easiest way to start perennial kale is from cuttings. You simply take a 6-inch stem, strip the lower leaves, and stick it in moist soil. Within 2 to 3 weeks it roots. Then it grows, and then it keeps growing. Tree collards can reach 5 to 6 feet in height over several years, creating a productive food hedge. Daubenton stays more compact, around 2 feet. Both are unbothered by most common pests and require little more than occasional watering and a feed of compost once or twice a year. You can harvest outer leaves continually without cutting the plant back. It gives as fast as you pick. Unlike annual kale, perennial varieties don't bolt to seed in summer heat. That means no bitterness problem. You get consistent leaf quality through more of the year than any annual variety can offer. We've covered a spring powerhouse and a year-round leafy green. Next up is a vegetable that most people associate only with Thanksgiving, but that deserves a permanent home in your garden, for reasons that go far beyond one holiday. If you've ever stood in the produce section looking at artichokes at $3 a piece and thought, I could never grow those, I need you to hear this. Artichokes are one of the easiest perennial vegetables to grow successfully. They produce abundantly for 10 or more years, and in warm climates, they grow so large and so prolifically that the real problem becomes what to do with all of them. Cinera cardunculus var. Scolamus has been cultivated since at least the 8th century BC, when the ancient Greeks and Romans prized it both as a delicacy and as a digestive medicine. The Romans called it a vegetable of kings. By the 16th century, artichokes were being grown across Mediterranean Europe and were considered a symbol of prosperity precisely because they produced generously and returned faithfully every spring. Modern research has validated the ancient reputation. Artichokes contain cynarin and silymarin, 2 compounds studied extensively for their effects on liver function and bile production. A 2018 meta-analysis in the journal Phytomedicine reviewed 12 clinical trials and found consistent evidence that artichoke leaf extract significantly reduced LDL cholesterol in participants with elevated levels. The edible heart also provides 10 grams of fiber per medium artichoke, roughly 40% of a day's recommended intake. Artichokes thrive in USDA zones 7 through 11 as true perennials. In zones 5 and 6, they can be grown as perennials with winter mulching, or as annuals that still produce the same year if started from seed early enough indoors. Give them full sun and well-draining soil enriched with compost. They're surprisingly drought-tolerant once established. Plants reach 4 to 5 feet tall and wide, so give each one 3 feet of space. Harvest the buds when they're plump and tight, before the petals start to open. Established plants will multiply on their own through offshoots called suckers. After 3 or 4 years, you can divide these offshoots and expand your bed for free. If you ever let an artichoke flower fully, which gardeners almost never do, the bloom is extraordinary, deep violet and the size of a fist. Butterflies and bees go absolutely wild for it. Consider letting 1 or 2 bloom each season for the pollinators alone. We're 3 plants in. All of them are productive, proven, and established, but the next one, number 4, is the one that most of my gardening friends had never even heard of before I showed them, and it may be the most efficient producer of any plant in this entire list. Has anyone in this comment section heard of Turkish Rocket before today? I'm going to guess the answer is no, which is exactly the problem. Turkish Rocket is a perennial brassica in the same family as broccoli, kale, and Brussels sprouts that produces edible shoots, leaves, and flower buds continuously from very early spring through late fall. It's cold hardy down to USDA zone 3. It grows in poor soil. It tolerates drought. It tolerates shade. It self-seeds readily if you want more plants. It basically asks for nothing and gives constantly. Buneas orientalis has been eaten across Eastern Europe and Central Asia for centuries. Turkish and Russian peasant communities relied on it as a spring famine food because it emerges so early, often before anything else in the garden, and continues producing through conditions that would devastate more delicate crops. It was actually introduced to Western Europe by European botanists in the 1700s as a potential food crop, precisely because of its exceptional hardiness and productivity. And then the annual cropping system took over commercial agriculture, and Turkish Rocket simply faded from mainstream knowledge, not because anything was wrong with it, because it didn't fit the model of something you buy every year. The young shoots taste remarkably like broccoli, mild, slightly sweet, with that classic brassica bite. You eat them the same way, steamed, stir-fried, blanched, and buttered. The leaves can be eaten too, though they get more pungent with age. Most people harvest primarily the tender spring shoots and early flower buds before they open. Grow it from seed or transplant. It tolerates almost any soil condition and truly requires almost no attention once established. You can grow it in partial shade, which is unusual and valuable for those of you with shadier garden spaces. Turkish rocket flowers are a bright yellow and extremely attractive to early pollinators, particularly mason bees, which are often hungry in early spring when little else is blooming. It's both food for you and a critical early season resource for your garden's pollinator community. 4 plants in, and every one of them has one thing in common. Once they're in your ground, they work without you. The next plant takes that principle even further. It actually spreads on its own and actively improves the soil around it at the same time. The finest French restaurants pay a premium for it. Home gardeners largely ignore it. That disconnect is one of the most baffling things in the gardening world. I'm talking about sorrel, specifically French sorrel and garden sorrel. And if you've never grown it, you are missing one of the most effortless, most flavorful, most rewarding plants you can put in the ground. Rumex acetosa has been eaten across Europe and Asia since prehistoric times. Medieval monastic gardens grew it as a digestive and as a culinary staple. The French have incorporated it into haute cuisine for centuries. Sorrel sauce is a classical preparation that appears in Escoffier's foundational 1903 cookbook, Le Guide Culinaire. It was considered sophisticated food precisely because of its distinctive bright lemony flavor, a flavor that comes from oxalic acid, the same compound that makes rhubarb tart. Nutritionally, sorrel is remarkably rich in vitamin C. A traditional use in cold climates, where citrus was unavailable, was to eat sorrel greens to prevent scurvy. It also provides significant amounts of vitamin A, potassium, and magnesium. Its oxalic acid content means people with a history of kidney stones should consume it in moderation, but for most people, sorrel is an exceptionally healthy green. Sorrel grows in clumps that expand year after year. It's one of the first greens up in spring, often appearing before anything else is awake, and it continues producing right through fall. It tolerates partial shade, making it ideal for growing under taller plants. It needs only basic soil preparation and occasional division when the clump gets very large. The flavor is unmistakable and incredibly useful in the kitchen. Lemon bright, slightly acidic, somewhere between spinach and citrus. Use it fresh in salads, wilted in soups, as a sauce base for fish, or blended into a bright green dressing. It pairs beautifully with eggs, potatoes, and cream. One plant will provide more sorrel than most families can use. Start with 2 or 3 and you'll be giving it away. Sorrel flowers are not particularly dramatic, but they attract a remarkable range of small, beneficial insects. And the seed heads, if allowed to form, feed finches and sparrows through fall. It's a genuinely wildlife-friendly addition to any garden. We've just crossed the halfway point, and every plant so far has been about leaves and shoots. The next one is different. It produces something that feels far more substantial, something that fills a plate, and it does it with a root system so deep and so established that it laughs at drought. This plant has one of the most misleading names in the entire vegetable world. It's not from Jerusalem, it's not related to artichokes. It's a native North American sunflower relative whose tubers taste like a cross between a potato and a water chestnut, and once you plant it, short of paving over your garden, you will never fully get rid of it. That sounds like a warning. I mean it as a promise. Helianthus tuberosus was a staple food for dozens of indigenous North American nations for thousands of years before European contact. The Abenaki, Haudenosaunee, and many Plains nations cultivated and traded sunchokes extensively. When French explorer Samuel de Champlain encountered them in 1605, he sent them back to France, where they became enormously popular in the 17th and 18th centuries, before falling out of fashion as the potato took over. Sunchokes contain a carbohydrate called inulin, the same prebiotic fiber found in asparagus, but in significantly higher concentrations than almost any other food. Because humans don't digest inulin in the small intestine, it passes to the large intestine where gut bacteria ferment it. This is genuinely excellent for microbiome health, and ongoing research at institutions, including the Rowett Institute of Nutrition and Health, has confirmed inulin's role in supporting beneficial bacterial populations. It's also notably lower glycemic than the potato, making it a useful option for people managing blood sugar. The fermentation process also produces the gas that gives sunchokes their colorful nickname among gardeners. Start with small portions. Your gut will adjust over time. Plant tubers in spring just like potatoes, about 4 inches deep, 12 to 18 inches apart. They'll send up shoots, grow into tall, gorgeous sunflower-like plants 6 to 10 feet high, and then the tops die back in fall, leaving a treasure of tubers underground. You harvest by digging, but you'll always miss a few, and those will become next year's plants. They grow in almost any soil, in sun or partial shade, in USDA zones 3 through 9. They're drought-tolerant. They require essentially no inputs, and they produce abundantly. A single plant can yield 5 to 10 pounds of tubers. Use them roasted, sautéed, in soups, or raw and thinly sliced in salads. They're exceptional. The tall growth provides excellent summer privacy screening, and the late-season flowers, small, yellow, cheerful, are nectar-rich for bees right when other food sources are winding down in early fall. We've covered roots, shoots, leaves, and tubers. The next plant is one that most gardeners only think about in one way, but in its perennial form, it's arguably the most productive thing you can possibly grow in a square foot of garden space. Let me be honest with you about something. Not everything in a good perennial food garden needs to be exotic or surprising. Some of the most valuable plants are the ones you can count on, season after season, to simply be there, productive, healthy, and easy, while the more dramatic plants do their thing around them. Perpetual spinach, also called perpetual beet or spinach beet, is that plant. And it deserves far more attention than it gets. Beta vulgaris var. Cicla is botanically the same species as Swiss chard and beetroot, a member of the Amaranthaceae family, with cultivation records stretching back to ancient Babylonia. Medieval European gardens grew it continuously as a reliable green through most of the year. It appears in the earliest European gardening texts, including Charlemagne's Capitulare de Villis from around 812 AD, one of the first recorded lists of vegetables recommended for estate gardens, because medieval agricultural advisors recognized its exceptional productivity and reliability. Its nutritional profile is impressive, high in vitamins K, A, and C, rich in magnesium, manganese, and copper. The oxalic acid content is lower than true spinach, making it easier on the digestive system for regular consumption. Unlike true spinach, perpetual spinach doesn't bolt to seed in heat. It keeps producing through summer when regular spinach would have long since gone to flower. It handles cold well, often continuing through light frosts and surviving mild winters in zones 7 and above. Sow seeds directly in the garden and thin to about 9 inches apart. Cut outer leaves regularly, and the plant keeps growing new ones from the center. It will eventually bolt, but even then, if you cut it back hard, it often resprouts. Many gardeners successfully carry the same plants for 2 full years or more. The taste is mild, slightly earthy, very similar to chard, excellent in stir-fries, soups, frittatas, pasta, or simply wilted with garlic and olive oil. The stems come in vivid reds, yellows, and whites, depending on variety, making perpetual spinach one of the most beautiful vegetables in a kitchen garden. The rainbow chard type is genuinely ornamental enough to grow in a flower border. 7 plants down, 2 to go. The next one is one I planted almost by accident and now refuse to garden without. It's the most forgiving, most giving herb vegetable in temperate horticulture, and it has a centuries-long history of keeping families healthy through hard winters. There is a plant that tastes like the most intense, most concentrated version of celery you've ever experienced. Every single part of it is edible: leaves, stems, seeds, and roots. It grows 6 feet tall without any care whatsoever. It comes back faithfully every single spring. It has been used as both food and medicine for over 3,000 years. Almost nobody grows it. Its name is lovage, and it is, without question, the most underappreciated plant in this entire list. Levisticum officinale was so valuable in Roman, medieval, and Renaissance cuisine that it was described in detail in Apicius, the world's oldest surviving cookbook, compiled in the 4th or 5th century AD, where it appears as a key flavoring in dozens of recipes. Medieval monastery gardens throughout Europe maintained lovage as an essential culinary and medicinal herb. It was listed in the U.S. National Formulary as recently as the early 20th century for its diuretic and carminative properties. Contemporary phytochemical research has identified a range of bioactive compounds in lovage, including phthalides, the same class of compounds found in celery and studied for their effects on blood vessel relaxation and blood pressure modulation. A 2015 review in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology documented lovage's traditional use across European folk medicine as an anti-inflammatory, digestive, and urinary tract support herb, and noted that several of these applications have since been supported by laboratory evidence. Plant lovage in a sunny or partially shaded spot in rich, moist soil. Start from seed, or even better, buy one established plant from a specialty nursery, because you will only ever need one. Lovage grows large. Give it a dedicated space at the back of a border or against a fence. Use the young leaves and stems anywhere you'd use celery, soups, stews, potato salads, stocks. The flavor is powerful. A little goes a long way. The seeds, dried, are used as a spice with a warm, celery anise character. The roots can be cooked as a vegetable. Once established, lovage needs almost nothing from you. Water in drought conditions, cut it back hard in late fall, and it will emerge vigorous and grateful every spring. Lovage is an exceptional companion plant. Its flowers attract an enormous range of beneficial predatory insects, particularly parasitic wasps and hoverflies that feed on aphids. A single lovage plant can significantly reduce aphid pressure across your entire vegetable garden. It's pest control and food in one. We've reached plant number 9, the final one, and I want you to stay for this, because out of all 9 plants on this list, this is the one that stopped me in my tracks when I first learned the full story. It's the most nutritionally extraordinary, the most historically significant, and it might be growing wild within 10 miles of where you're sitting right now. I want you to picture a plant that produces multiple onion flavors, mild green tops, strong hollow leaves like a scallion, small bulbs called shallots at the base, and then something extraordinary at the very top. At the top of each stem, instead of flowering and setting seeds like a normal plant, this onion produces a cluster of small bulbils, perfect little onion sets, already formed, ready to plant. And when the stalk gets heavy enough, it bends to the ground. The bulbils touch the soil, they root, and the onion walks, year after year, expanding its territory, producing food at every stage, returning without any intervention whatsoever. This is the walking onion, also called the Egyptian tree onion, the top-setting onion, or, in older English gardening books, the ever-ready onion. And that last name tells you everything. Allium proliferum has been cultivated in European and North American kitchen gardens since at least the 17th century, though its origin is believed to trace to hybridization between common onion and Welsh onion in cultivation, likely in the Middle East or Central Asia. It was a fixture of Victorian kitchen gardens specifically because it provided onion harvest across 3 seasons, early spring tops, summer bulbs, fall bulbils, from a planting that never needed to be renewed. The walking onion fell from widespread use not because it failed, but because commercial onion breeding in the 20th century produced large, uniform globe onions that suited industrial processing. The walking onion, which produces several different types and sizes, didn't fit the factory model. It retreated to heirloom seed networks and dedicated gardeners who never forgot its value. Nutritionally, all parts of the walking onion are rich in quercetin, a flavonoid compound with extensive research documentation for anti-inflammatory and cardiovascular benefits, as well as allicin, the sulfur compound in garlic and onions studied for its antimicrobial properties. A 2019 review in Nutrients summarized over 40 clinical and epidemiological studies linking regular allium consumption to reduced markers of cardiovascular disease and certain cancers. Plant the bulbils, or base bulbs, in fall or early spring, about 2 inches deep and 6 inches apart. They will establish quickly, and by their second season, will be producing reliably. Harvest the green tops like scallions throughout the growing season, mild, useful, continuous. Harvest the base bulbs in summer when the tops die back, smaller than a grocery store shallot, but beautifully flavored. Harvest the top bulbils in late summer, use them in cooking, or plant them to expand your patch. They grow in any well-drained soil, full sun preferred, but partial shade tolerated. Hardy to USDA Zone 3. Pest and disease resistant. Genuinely carefree once established. And because they walk, expanding their footprint on their own, a small initial planting becomes a generous perpetual onion bed within just a few years. Walking onions are deeply attractive to beneficial insects. The flowers, when they do form, are visited by a remarkable variety of pollinators, and interplanted through a vegetable garden, the sulfur compounds they release are documented to deter certain aphids and root pests from neighboring plants. They're food, flavoring, pest deterrent, and living history all in one. So let's come back to where we started. $5 for a bag of tomatoes picked green and gassed red, 1,000 miles from your home. You know what doesn't cost $5? An asparagus crown you planted 3 years ago that's been sending up spears every April since. A lovage plant that's been flavoring your soups for a decade. A walking onion bed that's been quietly expanding itself for 7 years and doesn't need a single thing from you. 9 plants, 1 effort, decades of harvest. This is not a fantasy. This is not difficult. This is how human beings fed themselves for most of recorded history, by building permanent, productive relationships with plants that give back reliably, year after year, in exchange for a little soil preparation, a little water, and the patience to let them establish. The grocery store will keep charging whatever it likes. The seed catalogs will keep selling you annuals every spring. And that's fine. There's a place for annual vegetables too. But these 9 plants, These don't answer to anyone. They just grow. Here's what I want you to do this week. Pick one plant from this list. Just one. The one that fits your climate, your space, your taste, or your curiosity. Order the seeds or the crowns. Prepare one small bed. That's it. You're building something that will be producing food when your grandchildren are in the garden.